Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're talking about Return of the Jedi.
Oh, yeah, man. I
Yeah.
loved it. You remember that movie?
Well, we're going to get into it today, Aaron. We're going to take
Yeah.
a nice, relaxed look at the films, the sights, the sounds, the smells of Return of the Jedi. Do you remember, Aaron, when you were a strapping young lad, you'd been to see Star Wars?
Yeah.
You'd been to see The Empire Strikes Back. And then
Yes.
all of a sudden, boom, the third, the final, the trilogy cap, Return of the Jedi. Tell me your memories surrounding the film.
They're great. And I'll tell you why. Because anticipation is a glorious thing. You
Yes.
can imagine, and I'm very fortunate because Jedi came out in '83. I believe it's the summer of '83, May 25th. Almost was that? We're right there near the date it came
Not
out.
only that, Aaron, we're celebrating the 42nd anniversary of Return of the Jedi this week. As of this taping, when this airs, it will be several weeks after the verse. But Lucasfilm moved the date up 2 days so Jedi could open on the 25th of May 1983, the anniversary of the saga's 25th of May 1977 debut. So this Star Wars and Return of the Jedi opened on the same day.
Yes, that's a good tip. I like that boat. So I was fortunate to have been around before Jedi came out. And I'd seen Empire, like you said, I'd seen them all. And so ponder a world where Empire was the last thing you saw.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Luke lost the hand, right? Uh, and here's Darth Vader, the father, all that stuff
Yeah.
that happened. And Han frozen in carbonite. And Lando turned heel, then turned face at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
The stuff
Yeah.
with Yoda had happened. Like, this was amazing. And so now it's time to wait for a while. You're waiting for Jedi. You know it's being made, because Empire was a huge hit. And so you're like, what's this going to be like? Who knows what's going to happen? Because, I mean, trust me, when they did all the stuff they did at Empire, I couldn't believe what they'd done. And I'm a kid, too, so it doesn't take much. And so here comes Jedi. Well, man, I was ready to go. I don't remember when me and Dad saw it exactly. I'm not even sure where we saw this one of two places. But we were there and it came out. And the opening of this movie, from the credits to the point where they leave Tatooine at the beginning, is some of the best stuff. I just love that opening. If you're not familiar with it, it's the part where Leia and Luke come back to rescue Han from Jabba the Hutt and his palace, and then they take him out, and they're over the Zorlak, or that thing is, and Boba Fett's there.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's there. It was sort of like the ultimate action scene for me as a
Yeah.
kid. And also you get
Yeah.
to see Luke, like, all of a sudden here comes Luke. He's not the little geek from the first movie. He's all man. He's
Mm-hmm.
cutting suckers down left and right. He's using the force to grab the lightsaber. That bit he did when he jumped off that platform. Oh man, it was so cool. Plus you got the Princess Leia bikini stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Added bonus. I was only
Mm-hmm.
12 at the time, but I wasn't made of stone, brother. You know what I mean? I knew what was going on. I loved it. So then the film kind of goes forward, and I will say, at the time, this is one of those things where how people mock people that watched the first Phantom Menace. They were like, "Oh yeah, I love that," but everyone else thought it was no good, right? I can sympathize with. I also thought it was no good, but I can sympathize with them because I thought the Ewok stuff was great. I loved all of that stuff. I loved it, and so uh, when I saw it, I was like, "This is great." And for years, I thought it was great. Now I look back on it, it's okay. It's not but I mean, the motorcycle parts were great. That part was great, but it kind of lulled a little bit. But then the ending, the big battle with the Empress, it was just awesome. All the space battle was going on. So is Jedi better than Empire? To me personally, no. I think Empire is Empire and Star Wars are like 1 and 1A,
Mm-hmm.
and Jedi is like B. It's like 2, but it's still great, to my opinion. A great movie, great ending, uh, um, and just a fun film, and a great way to cap off Star Wars. With that said, what did you think about it when you saw it?
Well, it's funny because I believe that I saw the made-for-TV movie Ewok: The Battle for Endor
Oh yeah,
before I saw Return of the Jedi. So, but, in 1983, I was 2. So I was not catching any of these movies on the first run.
yeah.
And so I remember when I finally saw Return of the Jedi, I was like, "Oh yeah, the Ewoks. I remember them from that movie." Um, but I didn't really watch any of these movies with any sort of grasp of what was going on until 97 when they released the special editions. And that was when I was friends with your brother and Jamie, and we all went to go see the movies in the theater.
Yeah,
And
we
and
did too. Yeah.
and yeah, I'm with you. People love to hate on the Ewoks these days and all that stuff. And yeah, they were like sort of a cutesy thing put in for the kids and all that stuff. Like I know that originally like the Ewoks were all supposed to be Wookiees, and there's story reasons why that would make more sense. But listen, man, uh it's fine. It's fine. It's freaking, it's freaking Return of the Jedi. It's like criticizing the White Album. Yeah, you can criticize it for being too long, or you can criticize it for being overindulgent or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's still a great movie. Um, I want to give you some trivia, Aaron, and I want to test your Star Wars knowledge. Okay.
Okay. I'm not optimistic on this, but I'll try. Go ahead.
Okay. We'll start off easy. What was the original title for Return of the Jedi?
Now this one I know, and the reason I know is because there were movie posters hanging up with this title, it was Revenge of the Jedi. And I
That's right.
remember as a kid thinking to myself, man, he's gonna get him some revenge. That sounds brutal, And then they changed it.
Yeah, so 6,800 teaser posters were released to the public before they changed the name. And so you can imagine now, if you can find an actually authentic one, that's going to be worth some bucks. Okay, trivia question 2. What was the secret code name of this movie that everybody was supposed to be working on?
That one I can't tell you. I don't remember.
Okay.
What was
It
it?
was this movie, Return of the Jedi, was filmed secret under the horror movie code name Blue Harvest.
Blue Harbor. Sure, I should have known that because that's been parodied over the years. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay. And here is one more. One
All right.
more. What was the audio system that premiered with Return of the Jedi that we still hear about today when we go see movies?
It wasn't Dolby, was it? What
Nope.
was it? What was it?
Return of the Jedi premiered with the very first THX
Oh,
Deep
yes, that
Note
was
trailer.
Lucas's thing, right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I forgot
So all
about
that,
That
all of
opening
that
was
stuff.
awesome on that.
That's
though. I
right.
will
That's
say
right.
that.
It all started with Return of the Jedi. So, obviously, Return of the Jedi did awesome. The
Yeah.
film grossed an unprecedented 6.2 million on its first Wednesday, a pre-summer benchmark that held all the way up until 1996. And the opening weekend, this thing played in 1,000 theaters over the opening
Yeah.
weekend. And get this, each one of those theaters, the average per theater on the opening weekend, $22,973 per
Yeah.
theater.
They went to the
Movie
money
theaters
bank.
would kill to make that money these days.
The thing about Jedi, you're not kidding about that. They're begging for. Can you imagine something like that? When was the last time a movie was anticipated like that? It would probably be like the maybe
Episode
I
1.
can't.
It was episode 1.
Yeah, you're probably right. But the funny thing about Jedi is, like, when I saw it, I thought it was awesome. All right, I loved it. And then as the years wound on, and you heard like, oh, they were supposed to be Wookiees. I thought to myself, well, that part maybe it wasn't as great as I remember. It sort of sagged a little bit. And the second it unsagged and became awesome again is the exact moment that the new trilogy came out. Because then you realize how difficult it was to
Right.
make these movies and
Yeah.
make them not suck.
Yeah, you're
I
exactly
went
right.
and saw every of all the new movies the new trilogy I saw on opening weekend at some point. And I hated them all. And I mean, and there were a couple I was furiously mad at. I mean, it's funny. The first one I saw, I was just puzzled. Like, what was that? Now I know there are some fans, and so now that because let's face facts, the new trilogy, episodes 1 through 3, were pretty much hammered for years. And now they're starting to look a lot better with the newer Star Wars that are even worse than those. So I don't know what
Yeah,
to say.
yeah, you're right. Now the other thing that as I become more sort of enamored with classic film and stuff, I always love to hear about these large format films like Panavision,
Yeah.
CinemaVision, stuff like that. Um, Return of the Jedi was actually released in a wide format in select theaters. Special large format prints. These are 70 millimeter prints that
Yeah.
were released in large theaters, not in West Virginia, of course. That gave you even brighter colors, better sound, and so there was sort of an upgraded edition that if you were lucky enough to live in a big city, you could see that 70 millimeter version. So and Ronald Reagan, a big fan of the Star Wars, he watched it 8 days after it premiered in a special screening at Camp David. So even the President of the United States was on board with Jedi, Aaron.
I could see Ronnie sitting there with maybe his wife, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe their tarot reader. He had a
Mm-hmm.
bowl of those jelly beans,
Yeah.
and after it was over, he went, "Well, Nancy, that was just dandy." That's what he would say. That's the
And
way
then
I
you
see
say,
it
let's
going
go out
down.
for burgers after
That's
that. So
with the bad dude.
that's right.
Exactly. That's
That's
exactly
right.
the way it went down.
So I hope we've whetted your appetite with a little talk about the movie. Let's talk about the arcade game, Aaron. Uh
Back.
all right. All right, Aaron. So the arcade game released and developed by Atari in 1984. Atari had been busy. This is right in sort of the we're coming to the end of the golden era of arcade games, but Atari never really slowed down. They were such a big company. This is this is post buyout when Warner bought Atari. They bought the computer and the console side of things, but then Atari Games soldiered forth and kept on releasing arcade machines. Um, in 1983, you had Star Wars, Crystal Castles, Food Fight, Cloak and Dagger. Okay. 1984, Marble Madness, iRobot, Major Havoc, Return of the Jedi. 1985, Gauntlet, Paperboy, Temple of Doom, Roadrunner. Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, which is odd. It's got to be the only instance ever where a film sequel was released out of order, and you had part two being released after part three.
That is
But
odd. I
yeah,
didn't know that's what happened.
yeah,
Now that you mention it, it's
that's
funny
what
because I
happened.
never saw Empire in the arcade ever. Not one
Hmm.
time did I ever see it.
Yeah, yeah. So, Aaron, there's so many great Atari arcade games from that time. Do you have one that really sticks out to you as being your favorite from that 82 through 85 time period?
Well, I I, I did not like Gauntlet.
Gauntlet sucks. Let's be honest.
I know people love that game, but it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I liked Marble Madness
Hmm.
a lot, so I mean that would be up in the running. I love Paperboy with the handlebars. I thought that was a unique game as well. So yeah, there are some good ones in there, but there are some duds in there too. Let's face facts; they can't
Yeah.
all be winners.
Yeah. I mean, I think Atari really hit their stride. I think that Food Fight is an amazing game.
Yeah, but I didn't play that in the arcade that much. But I mean,
Oh,
I
well,
knew it was
yeah.
there. Yeah.
I didn't play any of these in the arcade because I was
Oh
a
yeah.
toddler. So, but it's a lot of these. I feel like Atari sort of gets short shrift in terms of everybody shifts the blame towards Atari, the corporation, in terms of the crash and everything. But Atari Games, which was a totally separate division, continue to do great stuff. And even though in 1984 or in 1983 a lot of arcade manufacturers kind of cut off their orders, they didn't want to release stuff in 1983 because the crash had affected the industry so much. Atari never slowed down. They kept releasing stuff, and it was quality stuff for the most part. 1984 in the arcades, of course, this is my favorite year of arcade games of all time. There are so many classic games that were released. We talked about Marble Madness. 1942 came out in 1984. Pac-Land. What are your thoughts on Pac-Land? That's sort of a divisive title.
They're not. They're not. I can't heap high praise on Pac-Land. I'll be honest with you. That was
Yeah.
a bridge too far for me.
Yeah, Pac-Man's first venture into the world of like 2D
He looked
scrolling
cool. I thought
platformer.
he looked
Yeah,
okay.
had a
Like I
rad
used to watch
hat.
the cartoon. So
Yeah.
that's all right.
The designers of Return of the Jedi, you had Dennis Harper, who was the lead designer and programmer. He worked on Roadrunner. He worked on Steel Talons. Susan McBride did the graphics and animation. She also worked on Blasteroids and Skull and Crossbones. Gary Stempler was the hardware designer. He worked on Cyberball, which you and the Brent covered, I believe, in AR. Was it ARG that you guys did Cyberball?
I think so. It's funny going through all those games you just mentioned. Like Cyberball's the only one of those that I really like. I mean, a
Mm.
lot of those games. I mean, did you? Are those
Well,
any of the ones you
I
mentioned
think
that you like?
honestly, there was a reason why I cut off the Atari games after 1985 because I really think they fell off a cliff after 1985. Roadrunner is
Yeah,
pretty, but it's nothing to write home
it's
about.
a beautiful game, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
not that much fun. Steel
you,
Talons never did it for me.
yeah, pit, and of course we're entering into the pit fighter era, etc. So take that for
Pit
what you
Fighter is not
will.
bad. I didn't hate that.
And finally, one of the engineers that worked on this game was Chris Drawnby. He worked on Gauntlet, and he also worked on Hydra, which I believe you guys also covered on the maybe on the links or something on
No, I think we
ARG.
covered that game on here. I
Oh,
believe.
okay, okay.
If I'm not
Um,
mistaken.
so inside, what's inside this thing? Well, you've got this thing is powered by the good old 6502 CPU. There's two of these. You've got one that handles the game logic and one that handles the video timings. This is a game, Aaron, that also uses the Pokey. Call back to ARG again. Your Pokey episode, one of the most legendary episodes in your oeuvre. This thing is powered by 4 Atari Pokey chips. Aaron, it's the quartet of Pokey, and the game controls oddly enough with a flight yoke.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily expect that right off the bat, but it's the same yoke that's used in Star Wars and Empire. And this is also you view this with the 19-inch Wells Gardner K4900 running a CRT running at 288 by 224 resolution, and that is what is inside the cab.
Was
So
this part of an overarching system, like a system one, or was it just an
this
independent game? I
yeah,
was wondering about
I
that.
looked that up and it didn't, and I didn't see any connection. Like, how people always talk about Marble Madness as being like a System 1 game. I think that this ran sort of alongside those. I think this was an independent board that
That's what
wasn't
I thought. Because
connected to a
the
system.
next iteration of Atari's program was the one I had. It had Road Blasters and it did Temple of Doom and Marble Madness and stuff. This predates that. I wasn't sure if this was part of a system or an independent thing. So
Yeah,
4
yeah.
pokies, by the way. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's
If you
cool.
can strap that many together.
It's kind of funny because you always hear about supercomputers or just like lots of computers strapped together. I wonder how many pokies you could conceivably put together. You could have like 32 pokies that could play Bach or something like that.
That
That
would
would
be
be really
cool,
cool.
like a whole
Yeah,
orchestra.
right, exactly. So what do you do in Star Wars Return of the Jedi? Well, this game is based on 4 it's kind of like 4 mini games, mini scenarios, okay? The first level is a speeder bike level. And in this level you play as Princess Leia and you're driving through the trees of Endor. This is an isometric 3D game. So if you played Star Wars and you were expecting more of the same with Return of the Jedi, and you were also wondering where Empire Strikes Back was,
Yeah.
well, this is not anything like this. Yeah, I think that Atari took a look at what was the Zaxxon, the
Yeah.
Sega game, and they were like, yeah, isometric. That sounds cool. So they built this. It's a very Zaxxon like experience. You're trying to on this first level, you're on a speeder bike and you've got these Imperial troopers that are also on speeder bikes. You're trying to avoid them, shoot them, or make them run into kind of traps that the Ewoks set. Once you
Yeah.
get through that level, you get to a sort of triumphant sequence where R2D2 and C3PO are dancing around at the end. I really felt like they should have saved that for the end of the game. But anyway, you get that at the end of the first level. Then you go to a level where you're piloting the Millennium Falcon. You're making your way towards the second Death Star, and you're blasting TIE fighters before you go through the force field gap. The third level, you're piloting an ATST, so you're really getting a lot of the action from the movie, because this is all things that happen in the movie. If
Yeah.
nothing else, you might criticize this game for a lot of things, but if nothing else, it really puts you in most of the important action scenes of this film. So you are playing as Chewbacca, and you are piloting an ATST, and you're trying to dodge bouncing logs and get to the shield generator. And then finally, you are back inside the Millennium Falcon, and you are doing the Death Star trench run, essentially, where you go into the station, you destroy the reactor core, and then get out of there before the lava or the explosion catches up with you. And of course, at the end, the Death Star explodes. So this is a 4-stage arcade game. Once you complete that 4th stage, the game loops around again with tougher AI. Aaron, the sales in this game is kind of not great, is what we'd say about this.
Ooh.
We recently on the Summer of Arcade talked about, or so it was our last episode before the Summer of Arcade started. We were talking about Deluxe Galaga and how there's something like 42,000 Deluxe or Galaga cabinets shipped total. Well, Aaron, Return of the Jedi, the Atari production ledger figure here. We're talking about 800 upright cabinets. 800.
Really? That
That's it.
few,
Yeah, yeah.
wow.
So
That is
now,
crazy.
despite that, this game spent 30 consecutive months on Replay's top upright and dedicated video earnings chart. So what that tells me is either the Atari production figures are wrong, or the Replay charts were, they were affected by the sort of the downturn in arcade game spending between 85 and 87, which is entirely possible considering that was sort of a downward time in the arcade industry in general. So production numbers in Europe, I tried to find those. This game is, of course, very rare. If you want to buy this game in the UK, I was looking at some auctions. Some of the auctions have reached almost $10,000 for this cabinet in the UK. So if you're over there and you
Star
want
Wars
this,
fans.
yeah,
Yeah.
Star Wars fans are going to be snapping them up. Yeah, so that's just a little bit about Return of the Jedi, the arcade game. Aaron, do you have any memories, personal memories of seeing this thing in the arcade, checking it out, playing it?
I do. I remember when this came out. It came out at our local arcade at the mall, and boy, was I surprised that it was in color, because I mean, really, that was the first thing. That's stupid as that sounds. I assumed there was going to be another Star Wars game like the first one, the
Mm-hmm.
Vector game, because that
Mm-hmm.
one was so good.
Right.
And I'll have to admit also that I was surprised that we never got a Empire Strikes Back game like that would be like the Vector game. It really was surprising, because I mean, everyone, even back then, that was a legendary game.
Mm-hmm.
And so when this one comes out, I'm like, okay, I'll still love Star Wars. Let's give this a whirl. And I thought it was really hard to play, and I could never get past the first level on the Forest Moon of Endor to even see any more of the game. And once more, I hardly ever saw anyone playing this game. So when you mentioned that it stayed on the charts for 30 weeks as a big earner, I mean, this is one that I'm not gonna say it had a cup of coffee in the arcade, but it had a mug of coffee. It wasn't around all that long, and in the old days, like this game started out at the front of the arcade, then it kind of moved around to the side of the arcade, and then it's near the rear of the arcade, and then eventually it's up against the wall, brother, and that means you're in deep trouble. You know, that some games started at the back wall because they knew they were not going to be good. They were gone pretty quick. So I'm guessing that at least in these parts, this game wasn't a big earner because the only time I ever saw the extended scenes in this were when I mean, they would show a little bit of that during the opening, but like it was years and years later on MAME when I got to actually get more into the game when I couldn't have to spend quarters. I just didn't think the the there weren't that many games that used this format, like the Zaxxon, like you said, and it was still pretty new. I mean, for me anyway. And so it added a level of complexity that we weren't used to. We were simple folk back in those days. And then on top of that, it was hard to wrap your head around exactly how the game worked. In fact, I'm still not 100% certain about a few things on the first level, even today, because I don't understand exactly how it works. But negotiating your way through the woods, I always thought was tough, especially with that yoke. I thought it was a lot tougher. So this isn't one that I put a lot of quarters into. I learned pretty quick to move out of the way of this one. There are some highlights on this thing though that don't make it home. I like at the beginning of the second of the level where you're in the ATST and it's you're playing as Chewbacca, and before the level starts, Chewbacca's hanging out the roof going ha ha ha, like he's waving his arms like an
He
idiot.
wants to make sure the player knows that Chewbacca is inside the ATST.
Yeah. Another thing about that level in the arcade that Amiga got this too is like it cuts away. This is supposed to be simultaneous action to what's going on with the Millennium Falcon and its escorts going through the Star Destroyer. So it cuts back and forth. The Amiga version does this too. I always thought this was goofy. I never thought, why didn't you just give this its own scene? I understand they're trying to simulate simultaneous action because if you'll recall in the movie, they're trying to blow the people in space are trying to blow up the people on the ground are trying to blow up a shield generator that's protecting the not finished Death Star. So that's what's going on in this scene, and it happened while they were approaching the Death Star. They were like, "Hurry, hurry, do it!" But I mean, I don't know. To me, I don't think I've ever seen a game that did that. Can you think of a game that cut in between the scenes like that? It was weird.
No, this is at Atari they were trying new things. They didn't want to just do the Star Wars Part 2. They're going from an entirely new. You're going away from the vector graphics. They're going into isometric perspective. This is only a year after Zaxxon, 2 years after Zaxxon. So it's I respect their willingness to try something new, but I do agree it takes you out of the action. It's disconcerting for a game that's already really difficult to start with.
Yeah.
I only saw this game once in an arcade that I can remember growing up, and it was at the old Venture Lanes in in where's that, in Jefferson? I guess Jefferson is the
Oh yeah,
technical
I
name
do
of the
remember this
town.
being there. Yeah.
Yeah, they had an arcade there, and I put a quarter in, and it was the only quarter I put in because it was so tough. I knew I'd never get any better. So,
Yeah.
but I did see this one live, and it was still around. Yeah, this is it's a it's a really really ambitious attempt to, like I said, take all of the most effective action scenes from the movie, cram them all in one game. I will give them an A for effort and perhaps a C in execution, because just the isometric perspective. There's a reason why they weren't churning out isometric perspective shooters by the dozen after Zaxxon. It's a tough operation. It's a tough viewpoint to work from, and I think that people get frustrated really quickly with this perspective because it's hard to see everything. Things are deliberately masked from view in a way that they're not when you're side on or when you're top down. So that's really my thoughts on the arcade version. But enough of that preamble, Aaron. Let's talk about the Amiga version of Return of the Jedi.
Very good. So, it's funny, Boat, because I hadn't played this for a while, but I did play this on the Amiga back in the day. And this one came out in '88, so you're talking 5 years after the film was released. So you're pushing it, man, at that point. This is for our buddies over at Domark.
Mm-hmm.
Domark, they had a mixed bag when it comes to releases. Aside from the other Star Wars games, they did Badlands, the Castle Masters, if you recall those. They
They
also
did
did
Lords of Midnight on the ZX
yeah, they
Spectrum.
did. They did Cyberball port. They did Escape from the Planet of the Robot Monsters. They did the hard drivings. They did some of the James Bonds. Some of those things were good. Some were bad, and some were somewhere in the middle. The developer on this was an outfit I never heard of, Consult Computer Systems. That's who
Mm.
developed this. The only other game they're credited for is the port of Vindicators, and that's who brought this home. This was coded by Colin Parrott, who didn't do much on the Amiga. In fact, he's only credited with 2 games, Echo and Starbreaker. Starbreaker sounds like a pretty good name for a game.
Mm-hmm.
The graphics of this Dave Price, who was credited with just one game, Under Pressure. The music and sound effects were taken care of by Dave Kelly. He's got a lot more credits because he's the music guy, and he was behind the music for Dragon Spirit, Little Puff in Dragonland, and Donald Duck's Alphabet Chase and Vindicators. So he did a little bit more. This game, it's surprising. This is a pretty complex game, I would say, for the home port.
Sure.
And I was surprised to see that this got ported over. And I haven't tried these, by the way. This got an Amstrad port, an ST port, of course. BBC got a port of this, the C64 and the ZX. They all got ports. It'd be interesting to see, I'd be interested to see what the ZX did with this, if I'm honest, because you'd have to scale down the graphics. That might actually not be the worst thing. It'd be interesting. I would check that out at some point. This is an OCS joint, 1 disc on this one, and it pretty much, I would say, for the most part, this brings home what you would expect. Of course, they've got the ever popular "let's take up a fourth of the screen for no good reason" aspect of it here.
Well, it's
Where they
it's a vertically oriented game. So in this case, it's I think that it's a little bit more because this is the arcade.
was the arcade? No, I think the arcade was horizontal.
Was it
wasn't
horizontal?
I'm
Okay, well,
pretty
I
sure
take it all back.
was. And so what this does, unfortunately, it doesn't matter because in terms of gaming real estate, you've got less game real estate than you do
Right.
in the arcade, and it's in a game like this that's real important because especially on all the levels, really, because you really need that extra space to see what's coming. Unfortunately, they don't give you this much space in this, so it makes it a little bit harder. It's funny having played this game in the arcade. I was never a big fan, and playing it, I never really gave it much of a chance here. But this week, I don't have a choice. I got to give it a chance. I got to tell you, I was surprised, but I actually enjoyed this more than the arcade version. If I can be completely honest with you, I thought it controlled. It could be the fact that you're not using that yoke, using the proper gamepad or joystick. But I thought the controls were better. The fact that it's a little slower didn't hurt because I'm a little slower, so that worked out pretty good. I still had questions. On this first level, the forest move indoor, the bike level. At some point, when the bad guys get behind you, you can't exactly see what they're doing. So I was never sure if they were shooting me or ramming me. Like sometimes they'll get behind you, they don't do anything, and then sometimes you just die. And the arcade's the same way. I can never figure that out. Did you have any idea like how that worked when the bad guys got
Well,
behind you? I could never figure it out.
I really think that the game expects you to do some ramming. So like
Yeah.
the guys are behind you and you're sort of expected to either slow down and match their speed and just kind of push them into the side. That's the way that I had the most success.
Right, but I mean when they get behind you, I can never tell how long you had before you were going to die
Yeah.
and in
Well,
what
it's
way
just,
you died.
it's a part. This is definitely better than Lethal Zone, where everything about this game is better than Lethal Zone.
What
But
seriously, yeah.
where the bullets just come from off screen, from behind you and you're
Yeah.
dead before you know it. Like you've got a chance here. And I do think that they will fire on you, but like I said, I always just slowed down, got behind them, and then just ran them into the side of the level.
I will say, much like if you'll recall the scene in the movie where Leah's going through and Luke to a certain extent is going through the forest, like the Ewoks on the final battle, they're helping out when these bikers are around, and the stuff's in the movie, which or in the game, which I always thought's funny. It's funny in the arcade, like for example, you can fly through a log. on this version, which you can do in the arcade. Everything's here, but I could never get it to work in the arcade. I always hit the side of the log. I think it's more forgiving. It sort of like lines you up when you get close to it. There's a bit where the two Ewoks will smush the other guy in the with two logs.
Two
That
logs.
stick.
Yep.
There's also the old clothesline
Yep.
special,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't always. They're always they will do the maneuver when you fly through there, but it doesn't always work out to when the bad guys on you. Sometimes there's no one there. Sometimes the bad guys just hit the tree, but it is very satisfying when you do coax the bad guy and you get killed by the Ewoks because they're teddy bears and you're an armored killer
Right.
on a death bike. So it does amuse me. This game has multiple difficulty levels, easy, medium, and hard. And as you would expect, this level gets exponentially more difficult as you go up the scale. But on the opening level, I got past this on my first attempt. I was quite pleased with myself. And so just on the sheer good tidings from that, I'm going to give this first screen the thumbs up. What did you think?
This game is one of the very few games that I can unreservedly say I would rather play any day of the week on the Amiga than in the arcade.
You too.
And it's
I
for
can't
the
believe
exact
it.
reason that you mentioned.
Yeah.
The game runs slower. There are fewer enemies on the screen. There are fewer obstacles to contend with in terms of trees. This game is a joy to play on the Amiga. I don't I mean, I understand why they made the arcade game harder. They wanted more of your money. But when I switched over, I played the Amiga version first. Most of the time when we do an arcade port, I play the Amiga version first. And when I switched over to the arcade, I immediately wanted to switch back because I had so much more fun playing it on the Amiga.
Yeah. See that I feel less like an idiot because normally this never happens but I mean I had much more success and therefore had much more fun because when you boil this game down, they do a decent job of parroting what happened in the film. You like the scene where Chewie's on the ATST. Now that wasn't a super long scene in the movie, but still, they made a good fun level out of it. It's on easy. The scenes where you're in the Millennium Falcon, those are fine. They were fun. In fact, when you're going to blow up the Death Star and you go through these various tunnels and stuff and sometimes they shut up and you can lure the TIE fighters that are chasing you into them. It's a lot like the speeder level. It's fun. You're like, wow, I screwed that guy. Sometimes you get killed trying to get out of there. Sometimes you don't, but it's fun. They don't make them overly complex when you do them. This game still does have the switching of the scenes in the Chewbacca area, which is, again, it's strange to me that they did it that way, but I understand what they were going for. Because they wanted to make it more cinematic. And so I appreciate the effort, like you said, but I wouldn't do it that way. But with that said, I could get through a couple waves of this occasionally without getting humiliated. And so
Right.
and on top of that, they managed to get some of the stuff in the arcade in there. There's some call outs, the music. Now, I will say that the musical track, it stinks. They did not a good job on that. I didn't like it at
Well,
all.
maybe not the musical track, but I think that the digitized voices were just as good. There's not as many, but
Yeah.
man, the digitized voices in the arcade machine are the dirt worst. I
Yeah,
don't
they're
know
not
how
the
they can be.
best.
I don't know how they can be worse than the original Star Wars game, which I thought was okay. I think they just tried to do too many, and maybe they had to compress them. But I mean, they're barely understandable. So I wasn't, like I said, I was having so much more fun playing this game. I
Yeah.
didn't notice the substandard music as much because I was just having such a blast being successful playing this game that I've never had success with in the arcade.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I felt. I mean, you get your standard. I mean, if you put these things side by side, you can tell the difference. All right, we're not.
Right.
Don't get us wrong. Don't get it twisted here. But the truth of the matter is, what you get on the screen is close enough
Mm-hmm.
for me, and it also is good enough to have fun. Generally what you're doing with it, and so it makes it okay. But the the control was the key thing to me.
Right.
Maybe it was because you did say you played this at the arcade. It could be that just a yoke wasn't the right choice for this thing. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? And the
Hmm.
controller does such a better job. Now the Amiga version is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And again, my biggest problem with it is you don't get as much real estate, and that's a they could have done that better.
Hmm.
But hey, you get the Yub Yub song,
Yep. Yep.
you get the Ewoks celebrating. Like I said, you get the majority of the stupid garbage that you would expect to get. So which is okay by me.
Right.
I'm down with I like that
I'm
kind of
down with the
stuff.
stupid garbage.
You know, we didn't talk about the Yub Yub song, but it's like one of the all-time great songs, isn't it? And
It
I
is.
remember,
I
I
love
think
it.
I read that they took that out of one of the versions, and I'm thinking to myself, but why are you monkeying with stuff? You know what I mean? Don't screw with the versions. Don't take out the Yub Yub song.
Yeah.
That makes you,
Yeah.
because when you leave the theater, you're humming that. The
Hmm.
good guys won. You're
Yeah.
happy. That's the way it should be. Don't put in some kind of orchestra crap. Yub
No.
Yub.
Leave
Yo,
John
Yub
Williams
Yub.
out of this. I agree.
Yeah, it's not his fault. I don't blame
Right.
him. I'm just saying. What are we doing? What did you think about aside from the forest level? I mean, were you able to go through this whole thing on the
No, I couldn't
Amiga?
make it. I couldn't make it past the ATST level. I just was not skilled enough to do that.
It's tough. And I will say, I'll play this on all the different difficulty levels,
Hmm.
and I can tell you that medium gets. I mean, I will say they give you a chance on easy. Medium, it's a lot harder. And one of the things they do is they extend the level. So like you're on that biker level forever. You're just like,
Mm.
oh God, please let me get to the Ewok village. And then on expert, I mean, I couldn't get off the biker level. I couldn't even come close. I could get off the biker level in medium and get to the next level, but I couldn't get off I couldn't even get off of it on hard. So you're going to be, but I mean, I'm not saying it's not doable. There's a certain abstractness to this game that leads you to have trouble. Like again, it comes down to like I said, the bikes behind you or the stuff on the level with the ATST with the logs. Sometimes stuff comes out where you just can't get around it. Sometimes they make it real hard on you. Like I'm like, is there a path through these woods? I don't even know. It's so hard. There was when I played on the medium on the forest level, the last like third of the level, it's like you're going through a dense forest.
Well,
And you have to go
yeah. I
all the
mean,
way to the top of the screen.
to me, like when you watch Let's Plays of this in the arcade version, you just wonder. It looks like they're just doing magic to get through some of those tree things, and that's I really think. I mean, I understand why they opened the game on the speeder bikes because it's an exciting part of the movie, but
Yeah.
that tree placement is just a killer. It's just a killer.
It's brutal. It's
Hmm.
brutal. Yeah, I agree with you on that. So, I mean, is this a 5-star game? Are we going to be heralding this for now until time? No. But is this something, if you want to get your Star Wars fix, or if you sucked in the arcade but you wish you weren't as bad, I think there's fun to be had in this one. I'm not going to bury it.
Right.
I'm surprised because I
Hmm.
was coming in here with my shovel.
Yeah.
I was gonna bury a sucker. Did we get any action in the Discord on this one, Boater?
We got one big Discord review this week,
That's all you
Aaron.
need.
That's all you need. Pajako, the patron saint of the Amigos retro gaming community, says, I love the arcade version. So when I got a pirated Amiga version, I was quite excited. It looked and sort of played like Jedi, but wasn't as good an experience. For years, I genuinely could not put my finger on why, but now I know. The Amiga sprites are too big, and that loses you about half of the playable screen area. Even though it moves well, you have much less time to react to anything, and it makes the game harder. Graphically, it's good. Game sound effects with voice samples are good, and all on a single floppy. Side note, the funky intro music can get in the trash compactor. The Amiga could easily do something closer to the arcade, so why it's like this is a mystery.
Lazy.
Is the final port in the trilogy, Jedi sadly went to the dark side. 5 out of 10.
Let me ask you: do you like this more than Empire on the Amiga?
No.
Oh, really?
Because I'm a vector graphics mark. I
Fair
love
enough.
and I mean that here's the thing about Empire. You had me at the ropes when you watch those big AT-ATs, crumble, go down on their knees after you fire the tow ropes. I mean, I just love that. I never get
that is
tired
the
of it.
best level,
Yeah,
though. I mean,
yeah.
by far,
The
it's
rest
the
of the
best
game is
one.
sort of stinky, but that one level makes it for me.
I will say I didn't think there was even a comparison until this week, but now I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe. I kind of like them both. I looked this up to see how it scored. Lemon gives this one a 5.44, so they did not like it on the Lemon. The magazines of the day were somewhat in line. Amiga Computing did not seem to like this one too much. They give it a 63. Commodore User gives us a 78. The One, a 66. The average magazine rating is a 69. It's funny, I looked on eBay for this boat. I found, not only did I not find any, but I didn't find any sold recently. So I wonder how well this one sold, Boater. My guess is not so good, Al.
Yeah.
You know, so any parting thoughts on Jedi?
Give this one a shot. Don't listen to Pajaka. Most of the time you should listen to Pajaka, but in this case, if you found the arcade game frustratingly difficult, the Amiga version might prove to be a pleasant respite.
Hello, I'm British Jones, and I am here to talk to you about RetroRewind.com.
Mr. Jones, it's .ca.
Oh, for fuck's sake, you put .com right here on the bloody cue cards. Do you like to tinker? Get the old tip wet with solder? Maybe just sketch or doodle. Retro Rewind has an expert team ready to fix all of your creative mistakes. Frank and his team just love how you've learned to fix surface mount components by burning a hole in your A4000 board. So if you've got a priceless treasure you've hacked to pieces because you thought you were Adrian, get it fixed right at RetroRewind.com. It's .ca.
Did you just flip me off?
All right, Aaron, what do we have coming up next week on the Amigos Summer of Arcade?
Oh, boat. Oh, boat.
Finally, my time to shine. My favorite arcade game of all time, Do Run Run. Coming up next on Amigos. As always, guys, if you like the show, you want to support it, patreon.com/Amigos podcast. We would love to have you as part of our Discord community. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next week with Do Run Run. And until then, adios.
Adios.
Amigos is made possible by contributions from listeners like you. Patreon supporters help choose the games we play, receive exclusive magnets, and get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Visit patreon.com/Amigos podcast if you'd like to support the show and join our community.